it's probably fair to say that to some extent I've always enjoyed problem solving, but I think there's some sort of criteria for what types of problems that I tend to enjoy solving versus others. So, um, in general, I prefer to solve problems that do not have only one possible outcome or possible solution, I should say. So, something that allows some flexibility and and also I think that doesn't require, how shall we say, I generally prefer problems that I can solve in a reasonably short amount of time. So, in other words, if I have a gnarly, like things that are overly technical, overly deep in the weeds, typically don't interest me too much. Um, I like, you know, principles and outcomes. I guess you could say maybe an outcome-driven approach to problem solving is probably one of my favorites. And I do like kind of lightweight engineering and design, if you will. Um, so, for instance, I don't love auto mechanics. I think partly because it's usually it's more like math in which there's one correct answer, right? Like if my car's not running properly, it's usually because of one specific thing. Or maybe there could be multiple factors influencing each other, but usually it's one specific thing that needs to be solved, right? And if I don't solve that one specific thing, if I just replace another random part, and then I've completely whiffed. Um, Now, I'll give you an example of a problem that I have been enjoying working on, which is creating a workbench. Now, you might say a workbench. Well, that's not much of a problem. You just go online, find a plan, and build a workbench. I mean, what's there to solve? Well, I mean, for me, so solving a problem. Here again, going back to the whole desired outcome, right? So I've got some specific desired outcomes for this project in terms of, I want it to be not overly heavy so that I can move it fairly easily. It is designed, it will be on casters. Um, it needs to be reasonably economical, and it needs to have features that lend itself to, lend itself to really being useful for the tools that I have and the types of projects that I'm likely to get into. So, just any old generic, workbench out there is not going to be my cup of tea necessarily. So, this has turned into a design problem for me to solve, if you will, or a design challenge, an engineering challenge, so to speak. So, I'm using an online sketching type software, fairly basic, but has tools, has allows me to input lumber dimensions and things like that, and build a working or a visual prototype for my workbench. So I have been working on that, enjoying that quite a bit. So that's an example of a problem that I enjoy solving, right? Because there's a specific outcome, especially I suppose problem solving for a better future. Solving something in order to improve it or get a better outcome. I guess that's kind of always what you do with a problem in a sense, but I mean like a problem where, like with a car, if you're fixing a car, you're just trying to get it back to like where it was, like just working, okay? Well, I like a working car, but I don't like to spend hours and hours of my weekend working on just getting the car back to normal, right? Like that's not my idea of a fun time in most cases. Whereas spending hours working on creating something new that will make my life better, potentially be fun to build and enjoy and make, projects go smoother and things like that. Now that sounds way better. So, a brighter future, a desired outcome, and then, some flexibility in how I get there. It's like, yeah, there's not necessarily a right answer on what type of leg system that I use for my workbench. There's multiple acceptable options, perhaps, or could be acceptable options, widely accepted options. But for my specific design criteria, what's going to most effectively be good. And so anyway, and I've put substantial work. I mean, for me at least, substantial work into the project. I'm still not quite settled that I'm still not quite sure if I want to end up. I've got a prototype that I like pretty good. Not quite sure if I'm there yet. But I might be pretty close if I decide just to run with it. So at some point, probably I'll just be like, okay, let's just do it. Like, let's enough messing around. Let's just get this done. But it has been fun to be able to kind of visualize the project before I actually get to working on it, and I think it will dramatically improve the ease of the process of actually building it, to have it sketched out beforehand rather than just sort of try to think through it as I'm out there, with a whole bunch of lumber sitting around trying to figure out what I'm going to do where. So anyway, that's, I guess, the type of problem solving that I tend to enjoy.